one of the biggest mistakes that students make year on year is learning hundreds of quotes per each text, when in reality you need a few small quotes that link to multiple key themes. So in this video, I'm going to go through 3 key quotes for any Jekyll and Hyde essay. Now again, if you know these guys, these can be basically forming the basis of your core quotes that you use, and then you just adapt them. So the first one we're going to look at is a large, well-made, smooth-faced man. This is describing Jekyll with every mark of capacity and kindness. This is the first description we get of Jekyll, so it's really, really significant with us introducing the key themes and ideas. So topic sentence. We're going to go through a topic sentence. Some of you guys call it a point, some of you guys call it a topic sentence, whatever you want to call it. Basically the first sentence that starts your paragraph. And basically we can pre-learn these because we're going to really use basically the same quote, the same analysis, which can be adapting it to the question. And when I say adapting it to the question, we're looking at what is the word from the question, what is our own point that we're going to be making, and we'll go through that. So Stevenson constructs Jekyll as the embodiment, which is like the living representation of Victorian respectability, so being like social acceptability, presenting his outward composure, so his calmness and control, as a carefully maintained facade, it's like a false appearance, that conceals the psychological duality, threatening to rupture from within. So of course we see this is a complete facade, a false appearance, like a mask, that he is pretending to be this Victorian gentleman because that is what society expects of him. We can see he epitomises means he's a perfect example of a Victorian gentleman. He holds up something called social propriety. That means basically the standards, the ethics in which society expects. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through some analysis that we can actually pre-learn for this, because remember we want to pre-learn in our analysis and then we're going to adapt it in the exam. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the last minute revision section on the Lightup Hub to get this analysis for you. I'm just going to give you a little insight to what it looks like. So we kind of go for what is our dream grade for Jekyll and Hyde. Then we're going to create our own little grade growth system of like how we're going to get there. And then what I'm going to do is to understand where I'm missing out things before I pre-learn my analysis and learn everything. I'm going to write up a quick little paragraph here, because what I want to see is I want to get AI examiner feedback to show me exactly where I'm going wrong. Let's say I wrote this paragraph, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my feedback. And you can see here, I get personalised feedback of what I did well, where marks normally go missing for students, what to improve with some grade 9 vocab, and even my response rewritten up. So I can literally see, okay, what did I write, and then what would a model answer look like, and it's verified by literal real examiners. And now I'm going to go on to Jekyll, because obviously this is a Jekyll quote. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look at this key quote, and I'm going to look at my what, how, why. So what is that technique? How does it show it, and why is your reason behind it? So let's go through this key quote, and we can literally use this analysis. And I want you to pre-learn the analysis, putting it in your own words, and then we can just link it to whatever the question is, because this fits our key themes. Because what I've done on the Lightup Hub, and what you guys should be doing, is when you're picking out your 3 key quotes or for the key character, or 1 to 2 key quotes for each key character, you want to make sure it links to multiple key themes, because then you can learn a small amount of quotes, learn them in depth, and then you basically pre-written your paragraph before you can get into the exam. What we're going to do is we're going to have a look at this analysis here. So what this does, there's a paradoxical description of him being 50 and smooth face. So when I say paradoxical, it means conflicting. It's very strange that he's got a smooth face but he's 50, because he should be covered in wrinkles. So what this does, what the technique actually does, the paradoxical language, is it emphasises Jekyll's almost artificial appearance. It's like it's been constructed as a 50-year-old man would normally show wrinkles and signs of age. So again, it really reinforces that he has he's falsely constructed this facade, this false appearance, this mask, to try and upkeep social standards within Victorian society, but it's disingenuous, it's not genuine, it's not what he genuinely is. Now our how, I'm be linking this to a wider idea of what he really symbolises. So this is highlighting that he has internalised the archetype, perfect example, of a respectable Victorian gentleman so completely that his appearance seems almost manufactured. So that really reinforces how deep this repression is, that if you think he's constantly repressing it internally, it started to manifest in his external appearance, really shows the depths of this repression and how ceaselessly, like ongoingly, Victorian society really encouraged this. And then why? What is like Jekyll's purpose in this? Like, why has Stevenson constructed Jekyll in this way, particularly in our first description of him? Jekyll functions as a sanitised, so it's like a cleaned, image of Victorian morality, reflecting society's prioritisation of reputation over inner truth. So we can see here, it's this idea of this sanitised Victorian morality, that Victorian society had this expectation that everybody was pure, moral, pious meaning religious, and we actually see that physically manufactured in the way that Jekyll appears. Now we're going to look at how it can link to the different key themes. Now there are 4 key themes I want you to know in Jekyll and Hyde, and again I go through this in my Lightup Hub a bit more depth if you want it, but this will link to every single question. Now even if the question doesn't come up exactly using this word, they could all link back to it. So that's why it's really important to have a small amount of quotes linking them to multiple key themes, because if you have key themes that link to every question, you have the analysis for it, then all you have to do in the exam is adapt. So duality. So duality is like 2 conflicting sides. Jekyll's immaculate, so perfect exterior, is a suppression, so a forced hiding, of inner self. Stevenson presents duality not as an aberration, so an abnormality, but as a defining condition of respectable Victorian manhood. So he shows that the two are inextricably linked, they're really closely linked, that you can't have one without the other. So therefore his exterior just literally signifies that suppression of his true dual side. Reputation. So Victorian society judged morality by appearance rather than character, making hypocrisy, which is saying one thing and doing another, not just possible but structurally rewarded. So it's actually encouraged by Victorian society to repress your true side and to put on a face so your reputation to the external world was polished, moral, clean, but internally you could be into prostitution, which a lot of people in Victorian society were, into drugs, into things that are immoral, as long as it's not showing on the outside. Then we've got science and the uncanny. So the clinical precision of the description prefigures, kind of hints at, the experiment that will split the composed exterior apart, suggesting Jekyll's self-control is already kind of containment, so it's keeping something dangerous locked in. So again, this could allude to, it hints to this idea that he has artificially constructed his appearance, alike to how he's going to be artificially constructing things to become Hyde. And then we've got repression. So remember, repression is like pushing something down, like not facing it. The smoothness of Jekyll's face symbolises psychological repression, forcing desires below the surface. The more perfectly a man suppresses his impulses, the more violently they eventually erupt. So we can see the more that somebody tries to push it down, the more it comes out. And we see that in a very hyperbolic example with Hyde. When I say hyperbolic, it means a very exaggerated example. Obviously, not everybody in the world who suppresses their true feelings has this crazy external person, this double of their life that comes in, like we see with Jekyll and Hyde. That's why we say it's hyperbolic, it's over-exaggerated, but it's done to really demonstrate the dangers of repression. Then we have trampled calmly. So this is, of course, about Hyde when he tramples calmly over the body. So the topic sentence. Stevenson constructs Hyde as the externalization, so think about external, is like bringing something to the surface, of everything Victorian society most feared and most suppressed, presenting his violence not as a monstrous exception, but as the logical consequence of a culture built on total oppression of human instinct. This is really interesting because what Stevenson does is he inverts this quite animalistic violence, where normally in society it'd be like, this is shocking, I can't believe someone's so animalistic. But what Stevenson's doing really cleverly is he's going, well, actually that's just the logical consequence of this ceaseless, this ongoing repression. So actually that just logically makes sense, because with a culture that constantly brushes things under the carpet and suppresses things, this is the inevitable consequence. And then the technique we can look at for this is oxymoron. Oxymoron is 2 contrasting words placed side by side. For example, an oxymoron would be like pretty ugly. Pretty is like, lovely, and ugly is not so lovely. So pretty, ugly placed side by side is an oxymoron. So we can see the collision of brutality and serenity, so trampled being that brutality and calmly, that serenity, in a single phrase is deeply unsettling, suggesting Hyde does not lose control but acts with full composure, making his violence far more disturbing than ordinary rage could ever be. So again, we can't even put it down to this full animalistic rage. It seems composed, it seems controlled, it seems innate within him, like it's already within his character. It seems natural to him. Again, that's heightening that Victorian fear that humanity possesses this natural animal instinct, and it's not even like an urge that they're fighting against, it's something that they're naturally giving into, with composure as well. So some key themes we could look at. Duality. Hyde's calm violence is the precise inversion of Jekyll's composed respectability. So we really get that sense of duality, that conflict with his composed violence, with of course the composure of respectability from Jekyll. The capacity for this violence was always present within Jekyll's smoothness, making them mirrors rather than opposites. So again, we can see that idea of the duality that we said just in that quote about Jekyll's smoothness, and we can see again that duality of this slight violence that was hiding beneath this polished exterior in Jekyll. Then we got reputation. Hyde's total indifference, like lack of care, to social consequences exposes the fragility of a moral system held together entirely by reputation and shame. So the idea that if somebody is not fearful of their reputation or feeling shamed by society, then they're not bound morally, which doesn't form the grounds of a good moral society, because they're only doing it based on external appearances and external, basically, opinions. Where those forces have no grip, nothing restrains behaviour. So it's not bound by morality. It makes a very scary basis for society. Hyde's preternatural, so beyond natural explanation, calm, placed him outside normal human psychology, suggesting Jekyll's experiment has not liberated a human impulse, but created something genuinely inhuman. Which is again really interesting, because of course Jekyll's appearance is very humane, it's very respectable, but actually his exploration has created something inhumane and unexplainable. We can see that link with science. And then repression. The calmness of Hyde's violence suggests repressed desire does not emerge as tormented or conflicted, but entirely at ease. Repression does not weaken desire, but purifies it into something far more dangerous. So again, it elevates the stakes of this repression in the fact that we believe that maybe if someone's repressing something, they're repressing that desire, they're at conflict with it, when in actual fact, maybe that repression is just that they become at ease with it. Once they give into it, there's ease. There's almost this level of like a weight's been taken off their shoulders because they're finally allowed to indulge in what they wanted to. Then we got there was born in upon his mind a crushing anticipation of calamity. This is about Utterson in chapter 8. Basically, he's saying, if we were saying calamity, like all of this chaos, there's this crushing anticipation. He's waiting for this chaos to ensue. So the topic sentence, we can say that Stevenson constructs Utterson as a man whose rationalism, belief in reason, logic, and that's the answer to all problems, is gradually overwhelmed by dread. He cannot name or contain, presenting reason itself as an inadequate defence against psychological and moral catastrophe. So this is really interesting because, of course, we see Utterson as a very reliable narrator. And I talk a lot about this in the Lightup Hub with, if you go to the last minute revision section, if any of you have it, go on Utterson. We have some really, really lovely analysis on Utterson that will just skyrocket that grade. But the idea of this rationalism and how Stevenson is poking holes in it, he's ridiculing it. It basically means he's mocking it, because we see things like Enfield. We see, of course, Utterson. We can see how Lanyon as well, we have all of these different characters, these side characters who aren't Jekyll and Hyde, who have this rationalism, particularly Lanyon and Utterson. Remember, Lanyon is the other doctor who ends up dying from shock because what he sees. They're very rationalist, so basically basing everything on fact and reason. And what Stevenson is saying is we cannot deduce human nature just to reason and logic, because it's far more complex than that. And then we can look at the passive construction as a technique we can look at. So the born in upon his mind is a passive voice. So passive means that things are coming to him, he's not acting. So if you think active is you're doing something, passive is something's been put onto you. So we can see that this is born upon him, this is put upon him. He has no control over how he feels about this. So the passive voice strips Utterson of agency, which is the power to resist or act, presenting dread not as something he chooses to feel, but something that arrives and settles upon him against his will, suggesting the uncanny, so deeply unsettling, could not be resisted through rational effort alone. So again, it pokes holes in the Victorian system, that we can have a society based completely on reputation, and we can use rational logic to kind of dismantle the human behaviour. Stevenson is critiquing the whole of Victorian society's mindset towards society and towards the people within it. Then the key themes, duality. Utterson's rational composure is here crushed by intuitive dread, so like feeling rather than reasoned, revealing that even the most controlled Victorian mind contains feeling beneath the surface that could not logically be suppressed. And again, we can see that Utterson really is the epitome. He's the perfect example of this Victorian gentleman, of this rationalism. Remember at the beginning, he inclines to Cain's heresy. He doesn't want to get involved, but it shows even the most rational of individuals cannot beat some things with just logic alone. Reputation. What Utterson dreads is not only Hyde, but the destruction of the respectable world he has spent his life maintaining, revealing that his deepest loyalty is to reputation rather than truth. So we could see that his whole worldview would be shaken if he then starts to believe about Jekyll and Hyde. We see that with Lanyon. Think about Lanyon. He is a rationalist. He's based everything off fact, and as soon as he finds out about Jekyll/Hyde's experiment and witnesses it, he literally dies of shock. So we can see that same level of fear that probably is coming from Utterson. And then science and the uncanny. Something being borne in on his mind places Utterson in the grip of force beyond rational comprehension, so understanding. Suggesting Jekyll's scientific transgression, which means going against something, has produced consequences that are spilled far beyond the laboratory. So the fact that it's been borne upon his mind and that passive construction of Utterson shows he has no control with the evolution of science and the rapid rate that it has been changing, as we see with Jekyll and Hyde. And then we've got repression. Utterson has spent his entire novella suppressing his suspicions. The crushing weight of calamity arriving all at once is the direct consequence of sustained repression. So we can see this ongoing repression, and the fact that it's all coming on him at once, it shows that he cannot suppress it any longer. He's been completely overwhelmed by it. So guys, they are 3 quotes that you can use. If you did want all of the quotes, I give you all of the best quotes on the last minute revision section on the Lightup Hub, with all the what, how, why analysis, with all of the things to link, the key themes, the context, the AI marking, the how to apply it in the exam. Like, that's all done for you. Grade 9 essays, predictions, like, it's all there. If you did want that, I've got it there. But if not, guys, have a lovely rest of your day and make sure to subscribe to the channel. Bye.